I'm just so happy to see you all. It's been almost one whole year, and I've been crying like that since. Uh, Today, the topic I will begin speaking of, it came to me in a very interesting way. Does anyone know the name of the class that I'll be giving? Raise your hand if you happen to know it. Someone must know. Yes, Matiti. Between Two Worlds. Now, the name of this came to me long after a thought that I was having, because I find it very difficult in the sense that a lot of the classes I give are on the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. A lot of the classes that I've been giving in my actual study has been on Chaitanya Charitamrita and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's in a different world. He's so easily uh, goes to the world of where is Krishna, where is Krishna, where is Krishna. His mind is fully on Krishna, internally so completely absorbed. And practically speaking, as a renounced sannyasi, it doesn't have anything to do with the material world at all. And then I read and speak sometimes about Krishna's pastimes. And just recently, I've been reading and studying about such an. It'll be the topic of the next Govardhan retreat. So I don't want to give away too much, but it's between the great lifting of Govardhan Hill and the great Rasa dance. There's chapters 26, 27, and 28 of the 10th canto. And these chapters are so interesting because this is what Srila Sukadev Goswami wants to present to us. He wants to fill our consciousness with some very specific ideas and thoughts and tastes before he's going to explain the rasa dance. So my mind wants to be absorbed on that level. And yet there's the practical realities of life, like when microphones fall down. And this one is a bit wobbly, isn't it? There's so many practical things that you have to do in life. And I don't even have a job, and my children are all grown up. At least the biological children are. Um, but it's very, very tricky, I find. How do you become Krishna conscious, think about Krishna, and yet be practical? And I saw that with Srila Prabhupada. He was so practical. And that was one of my first experiences of Srila Prabhupada. I was being brought up in New York. Um, you have to be practical when you're living in New York. It's like living in India. If you're not practical, you don't survive. You don't even, if you're not practical, if you're very polite to everyone, you can't even cross the street. Practically speaking, there's so much traffic. And so one of my first experiences of Prabhupada was at 26 Second Avenue. And I had the fortune of going for a morning walk with him. It was a Sunday, and he walked to Tompkins Square Park, and he came down from his apartment. And it was very interesting for me because the streets in New York aren't the cleanest of all places. And he came down, and we had been taught and we learned that when you see Prabhupada, you offer your obeisances. So I went to offer my obeisances in the dirty streets of New York. And I perceived that he didn't really want me to do that. It wasn't really the right thing to do, considering all things. But I did it anyway because that's what you're supposed to do. Later on, I actually did the opposite in Hong Kong. I had learned the lesson, I had remembered that lesson um, quite a few years later. And then in Hong Kong, which is also quite a dirty old, nasty old city, um, I saw Prabhupada walking near the park, the Hong Kong Calvin Park, and I didn't physically offer my obeisances. Internally, I did, and he was quite satisfied with that. So in any case, while we were walking towards Tompkins Square Park, I had a question in my mind. And this question was a practical question, and it was very important to me. And the question was, is Krishna consciousness really practical or not? And the test that I was going to be watching for was whether Prabhupada, if there was a red light where you have to stop at a red light when you're walking, and in Japan they actually do this whether there's traffic or not. But what would happen if there was a red light and you weren't supposed to walk across the road, but there was no cars at all? I was wondering what Prabhupada would do. So while we were walking, actually that happened. There was a red light on 2nd Avenue, and we weren't supposed to walk across, and there was no cars at all. What would Prabhupada do? And without a second's hesitation, he just walked right across the street. And oh, yes, I understood. Krishna consciousness is practical. Prabhupada is practical. So how do we practically live in this world? How do we practically live in this world and yet be Krishna conscious? Because being fully thoughtful of Krishna seems to demand 24 hours a day, and being practically in this world seems to demand 24 hours a day, and there's only 24 hours a day. Well, how do you do it? So I had been thinking about this, struggling with doing it myself. How do I do this? How do I negotiate this? Do any of you also have this issue? Just curiously, how do you fit everything in? How do you? So it's at least four of us who have it. Maybe even okay. Some people are just being shy and humble. But yeah. So then, then one day while I was in Vrindavan, I have this habit that I try my best and almost and generally do it. I listen to Prabhupada speaking every morning, either a lecture or a morning walk, usually a lecture. And I was listening, and I really liked the early lectures of Srila Prabhupada, 1960, 67, 68, 69, and maybe 1970. But, yeah, but all they have their different flavors. So I was listening to a lecture in 1966, and it was April in 1966. Now, what month did Prabhupada arrive in the United States? Does anyone know? September what year? 65. So, okay, let's see how many of you can figure it out without taking out your mobile phones. How many months? This was spoken in April 1966. How many months was that? 8, 7. Some of you maybe have to take out your mobile phones or ask Chat GPT, how many months is it? But and when he arrived, he spent the first maybe 2 months in Butler, Pennsylvania. So and then he came to New York. So this was really just 4 or 5 months after he had arrived. And Prabhupada was speaking exactly on this topic. And he gave quite a full explanation. And I heard it once and I thought, did I really hear properly that Prabhupada has answered my question? How to do it? How to be Krishna conscious while living practically in this world with our feet on the ground? When I was in the university, I had a philosophy professor, who used to say that it is okay to have your head in the clouds as long as your feet are on the ground. So is it actually possible to do this, and how to do it? And Prabhupada, I heard the lecture once, and then I heard it again, and then I heard it again, and then I heard it again. And I thought that every bit of this is so relevant to my question, and perhaps the question of others, that I thought I must let you all hear this class of Prabhupada's, and I'll speak about it. And 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 let's see how, if you can get some hints and practical ideas from discussing with others and hearing what Prabhupada says on how to solve this problem. Because if we don't solve this problem, how to be Krishna conscious in this world, um, it's not clear how we're going to be able to get our consciousness to the level of being with Krishna in the spiritual world. So, because here we are, most of us are here, even though most of us, though we're here, our minds are not here. But, oh yeah, that's one thing that it's really handy to do. Try to keep your mind here while your body is here. Because that's one of the differences I've discovered between adults and children. Yeah, that's you folks in the middle. I guess we're all children. Well, anyway, the adults, or when a child's mind wanders, what happens is their body starts wandering also. So sometimes you'll see, especially the younger ones, in a class, because I give class and there are young ones, and sometimes you see them, you're giving class and you're speaking about this very important topic, and they're going like this and like this and like this. Their mind is somewhere else completely. And not only is their mind somewhere else, their body is somewhere else. And adults have mastered the fine art of having their mind somewhere else, but their body's making believe that it's right there. As opposed to our illustrious children. So let's see if we can focus, try our best anyway. So what I'll do is I'm going to read some. Does everyone have a notebook and a pen also? Okay, see, that's something, I just did something that a teacher shouldn't do, because I asked you, does everyone have a notebook and a pen, but no one actually knows if everyone has one. Is that right? Unless you're all-pervading Vishnu, uh, or situated in everyone's heart. You don't have one. Okay. See, the proper question, the way I should have asked it, is there anyone who doesn't have a pen and a notebook? Raise your hand. Okay. See, that you know if you have one or not, but you don't know if, anyway, that's it. Just a little teacher training going on. Okay, so how will we, okay, the notebooks and pens are being passed up, it appears. Or when it's the time, we don't need to use them right this moment, unless you want to take notes. What happened to your wrist? Inflamed? How did it get inflamed? On your computer. Yeah? Yes? Cooking. Is it working too hard, or is there something you have to change as you work? Are you sure? Now I'll ask you what it is that you have to change. But later I'll ask you. Okay. So could you, Sri Chaitanya, now hopefully we'll be able to see it despite the fact that there's not enough, there's too much light. Also, it's also interesting who sits in the front and who sits in the back. That's also an interesting thing that the teachers learn to be aware of, because there's people who have to sit in chairs, and then there's the naughty ones who want to sit in the back. And there's also ones like me who tend to like to be in the back so they can observe everything. I tend to be like that. So here's the and the people in the front. They have, because I can't see everyone in the back. It's hard, and I usually try to look at everyone and see who's there. And I see so many happy, um, familiar faces and of dear friends, and so that makes me so happy. Um, but but the benefit of sitting in the front is if I catch you not paying attention, you get the point. Especially, are you going to be? What's your name? No, no, the Balav. Still, you were Balav last year too. Yes, yes. You know what Balav means in English? The meaning is very dear. Everyone loves you. How does that feel that everyone loves you? Does that make you feel happy? Kind of. Okay. 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 Well, I'll talk to you later also and find out more about this. Okay. So I like this between two worlds. Which one are you more attracted to? Are you sure? But I find myself between the two. Okay. The next slide. The next slide is all blue. There's very deep meaning connected to that. I Unfortunately I can't really. Could someone read it? Does someone have a microphone? Please. Yes, thank you. Who? Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, thank you. What's your name? Ethan. You know what Ethan means? I also don't know, but it must be something wonderful. Okay, so this is based on, okay, what date is it based on? What lecture, Ethan? Without looking. What date? Yes. So it's another teacher's trick. If you ask a question like that to one person, that everyone thinks, uh-oh, he may call on me, so I better know the date. So it gets everyone thinking about the date. Okay, next. Yes. So this verse is the topic of Prabhupada's class. So this is just 7 months after he's arrived, and he's been preaching or speaking to Westerners. And this was in New York, just for a few months. So it's so interesting to me to hear how he's going to present Krishna consciousness to people who are ordinary people, uh, generally speaking, not from India. They have no understanding about the culture. They There's one talk that he gives around this time, and I've mentioned this so many times, but it's so important to me to give us a frame of reference of who Prabhupada is speaking to. That he says he wants to make the point that Krishna's body is transcendental. That means it never grows old. Even at the time of him speaking Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said he was 125 years old, and yet he looked like a young boy. And he said, "You'll never find a picture of Krishna as an old man." And then he asked the people sitting in front of him, "Have any of you seen a picture of Krishna as an old man?" Then there's a long pause. Then he says, "Have any of you ever seen a picture of Krishna?" This is who Prabhupada was speaking to. because no one had. So he's explaining this verse. Yoga sta kurukarmani sangam chakva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchite. And the translation is that Krishna is telling Arjuna, who doesn't want to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, perform your duty equipoise, yoga-sta. And this is really, that first line is the last line of the verse of the English translation. That's actually the end. But he's going to define what it means to be situated in yoga, to be fixed in yoga. And he's going to, in his talk, speak about what yoga actually is. So yoga start to be situated in yoga, to be fixed in yoga, Kuru Karmani, oh best of the Kurus. You should do your karma, you should do your duties, you should do your work. So to be fixed in yoga means you should do your work. Sangam chakva dhananjaya. Sangam means attachment, or the meeting. The meeting between you and the objects of your work is the results of your work. Chakva, you should give it up, O Dhananjaya. O Dhananjaya, you should give up the attachment to what? Siddhya siddhyo, success or failure, or give up your attachment to the fruit of your work, whether it works out properly or it doesn't work out properly. Samobhutva, you should be samobhutva, you should be equal, whether you're successful or non-successful as you do your work. And that samatvam, the quality of sama, the quality of equanimity, of being equal in success and equal in failure, that focus of consciousness, fixedness of consciousness, not being elated or happy specifically when there's a success, or not being distressed if there's failure, just equal consciousness. Yoga uchite. This is called yoga. Again, here is Prabhupada's translation from the Bhagavad Gita. Perform your duty equipoised, equal in consciousness. O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure, such equanimity is called yoga. So if I asked you right now, how would you define yoga or connection with the Supreme? How many I won't call on you, but how many of you could do it? Raise your hand. I'm not going to call on you and test whether you're okay. Maybe I haven't done a very good job explaining it. Okay, but I'll ask you. Is it all right if I ask you? Because I said I wouldn't ask anyone, but is it all right if I ask you? Okay, what is yoga? And you work. That focus, equal, steady mind is yoga, but of course there is more, and there's always more. So this first class that Prabhupada, that we're going to have this morning, could you go on to the next slide, please? First class is, who can read it? Keeping, oh yes, Ethan, but loudly, loudly, loudly. So there's 3 parts in this first class of Prabhupada's lecture, and they're all under the title of Keeping in Touch with the Supreme. And the first part, which we'll speak about right now, is called The Practical Problem. Stating the practical problem. Prabhupada is going to define what the problem actually is. Now, what I'm going to do is read it, Prabhupada's words, and Krishna willing, I'll just comment a little bit on it, and then we'll hear Prabhupada's words directly. So Prabhupada states the practical problem. The whole world is moving under the bodily conception of life. Because I'm born in this land, my body is born out of this land, the American land. He's speaking in New York. Therefore, I am thinking I am American. Because I am born in India, therefore I am thinking Indian. Because I am born of a certain family, therefore I am identifying myself with that family. Because my father has given me some name, so I'm identifying with that name. So my position is that I am all around surrounded by this bodily conception of life. Now, oh yes, kindly turn off your mobile phones. Can you do it? Now, Prabhupada continues. From studying Bhagavad Gita or deeply thinking over the matter, I come to understand that I am not this body. This is the first teaching of Bhagavad Gita, but also this fact that we are not the body, just by using one's intelligence or even just by slowing down one's mind, one can come to this realization. And in fact, the whole Buddhistic meditation of mindfulness is just for this fact, to slow down the mind, get it free from the mode of passion without touching the mode of ignorance, and placing the mind in goodness, and then sattvam samjayate jnana, that one gets knowledge just by that. And what is the knowledge? One perceives oneself is not the body, but as consciousness. Now, in Vaishnava philosophy, we don't say we are consciousness. We say that consciousness is the symptom of the soul, not consciousness is the soul. That's actually impersonalism. But just by slowing down the mind, one can perceive oneself as not the body, as one's consciousness. So Prabhupada's saying, so somehow or another, if a person, either by studying Bhagavad Gita or hearing philosophy, or by born into a culture where it is understood that we are not the body, I come to understand this. So that is settled in my mind. I understand it. That's all right, Prabhupada says. But actually, I'm working on the bodily plane. I'm working on the platform of being a body. Myself and Jagatrini Mataji, once we were in Hong Kong and we met one very wealthy young Indian man, and he said he was smoking a cigarette. And being young myself and knowing everything, I said, why are you smoking a cigarette? You shouldn't smoke a cigarette. And he said, I'm not smoking, that's just my body. There was something a little chalu in this person, a little bit maybe. So here's the problem. I may theoretically know that I'm not my body, but I'm practically working, acting on the bodily platform. This adjustment, Prabhupada says, is required. That yes, you for the present moment, because you're entangled or enwrapped within this, encaged within this body, so you cannot say, I will work without this body. Okay, I know I'm not my body. I know I'm a soul. So now let me work on the spiritual platform alone. I'm not my body. I don't need my body. I remember also reading Bhagavad Gita chapter 18 when I was a university student many years ago, and sitting in the library and becoming so excited to hear and read and understand that I'm not my body. And I was in a very cold place in upstate New York. I usually don't want to say what university it was because everyone will laugh. It was the University of Buffalo. So what do you learn in the University of Buffalo? Go to the left, go to the right, this, that. But I became so excited. I walked outside and it was so cold. In Melbourne or in Delhi or Mumbai, or South India, you can't imagine how cold it was. It was so cold. And I kept thinking, I'm not my body. I'm not cold. And I didn't feel cold. And the next day I was so sick. So you can't say, I will work without this body, but you can work in such a way. Now, here's what Prabhupada wants to say. But you can work in such a way, and this is what we want to learn how to do, that even without this body, even even with this body, you can work in your spiritual platform. And that is the great challenge. Even with this body, not being the body, how to work on the spiritual platform. Although I am in this bodily conception of life, still I can work from the spiritual platform. That's the issue that Prabhupada's going to address. And that was exactly what I had been thinking about, how to do this practically, actually. So that technical knowledge, how to do that, is instructed by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Prabhupada continues, you are not this body, but you have to work at the same time. Then how? Now, here is the formula. Yoga sta kuru karmani. Be situated in yoga as you do your duty. Yoga means not asanas, not pranayam, but being connected. How to work with this body, but in consciousness, to be connected to the supreme absolute truth, Krishna. That was exactly the problem or the issue, the challenge that I had been thinking about. And here Prabhupada was going to directly speak about it. Yoga sta. Yoga sta means you remain in spiritual consciousness, but at the same time you go on with your usual work. You remain in spiritual consciousness and go on with your work. It is very difficult, he asks. So my answer to that is, it is not difficult to understand, but unless one is a deep devotee, it is difficult to do. So then the challenge becomes, well, we'll hear about the challenge, but how to become a deep devotee. But one can't unless one really desires to become a deep devotee. What to speak of, what does it mean to be a deep devotee? So Prabhupada continues, I am working with bodily concept of life. How I can be situated in spiritual conception of life. So this technique is Sangam Chakva Dhananjaya. Sangam Chakva Dhananjaya. Working without attachment, without being touched with bodily conception, working, using the body, but not being attached. And how can it be done? Siddhya siddhyo samobhutva samatvam yoga uchate. By acting without attachment to the results of one's work. That is called yoga. That neutrality will be, and Prabhupada continues. So in the former verse, he says, it has already been explained that you have a right to work, but not for the result. Don't be the cause of the effect of your result. Then you will be bound up. Now, Prabhupada is addressing, and that's the end of this first part of the lecture, he's addressing one, not the entire point, but one of the elements of how to be spiritually situated in the material world, working with a material body, working in a material situation, how to do it. And the first point that he's been making, which is Krishna's point, is don't be attached to the fruits of your work. But there's more, and we'll discuss the more gradually. But here, Prabhupada has stated the problem, the actual issue, that even if one understands that he is a soul, theoretically or even practically realizes it, and he's not the body, one nevertheless has to act. It's unavoidable because activity is the nature of the soul. And that's why it's so hard to sit, especially when one is young, but also especially when one's older, for so long, because the body is inactive. Unless the intelligence and the mind and the consciousness becomes really engaged with what's being said, the body becomes very restless because why? Because the mind becomes restless, because it's not engaged, because it has to be active. We have to be active. Inactivity, and Prabhupada will explain this, is just simply not an alternative. So, how can one act on the spiritual platform? Well, practically speaking, he's an embodied soul in the material world. To avoid becoming entangled in material reactions. Now, here's why we don't want to act ordinarily. Why do people work? Is to get something to enjoy. And what's the problem of working and being attached to the fruits of one's work? That that entangles a soul. It entangles the soul in so much suffering. With the concept of enjoyment pushing us, the result is suffering. Suffering. Birth, we already know, birth, death, everyone can repeat it, Tukalayama, Shastratama, Nityama, Sukham, Loka, birth, death, old age, and disease. But not only don't we get the enjoyment that the soul is hankering for, and not only do we find ourselves in a frustrating situation again and again, whether we are rich or poor, male, female, this body, that body, tall, short, beautiful, ugly, intelligent, talented, not intelligent, this, that. No one can accept this point yet. And I will talk about this a little later, but Prabhupada insists on this point, that this material world is just not a place for a gentle person. Now, when I start speaking about the negatively about the material world, I often will ask the children to go like this, because they're not at the age where they should really be hearing that in one sense, because they have to go through life and have to strive to advance and achieve something. And we don't want to discourage them because there's a way to do that for Krishna too. But the elderly amongst us, of myself being one of them, we already know that which, even when you're 30, you don't you sort of may know theoretically, but you don't quite really believe that it's going to happen to me. And you see these old people sort of struggling as they walk, and you think, I wonder why they do that. At least I used to think like that, but now I know just why they do that. And it's not fun. So there's reasons on the negative side why we don't want to become entangled in the material world. But there's also reasons on the positive side. And Prabhupada could speak so strongly about why one shouldn't do it, because he was speaking from the depths of the positive side, what we're missing in our relationship with Krishna. And that is what every soul, regardless of the body, is longing for. The sweet fragrance of the taste of our relationship with Krishna. I said something where I, looking at it from the poetic point of view, I mixed my metaphors. I said the sweet taste of, does anyone remember what I said next? The fragrance. Taste and fragrance. You taste with your tongue and you deal with fragrance with your nose. But fragrance is subtle. It's the feeling when you walk in front of Radha Ballava, and it's different from walking into another room, a museum with statues. It's subtle, like a fragrance. When there's a wonderful kirtan going on, some of the spiritual world has entered this dark material world. It's different. There's a rejoicing of the soul. The soul is touched. When one is actually entered into the mysteries of the Bhagavatam, when one is actually associating on the proper level with devotees, when one actually touches the land of Vrindavan, the land of Sridham Mayapur, and, and just touches it a little bit below the surface level, it's, you're not in the material world. Or you get a fragrance of what descends into the consciousness of a different realm, a sweeter realm, a more subtle realm, a more refined realm, a realm that actually satisfies us, the us within the body and the mind. And Prabhupada, speaking from that platform, could say with such strength, don't waste your life. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your life. Human life. So, so Krishna is stating a key here. Keep the mind equipoised, free from attachment to either success or failure. So that's a point that Krishna wants to make. Okay, so why don't we play the first of the parts and hear Prabhupada say what I just read with my little comments.
The whole world is moving under the whole world is moving under the
Shall we try again? Okay, let's do it. What are you thinking right now while we're waiting? Where did your mind go? I mean, I don't want to hear exactly. Krishna knows, but what, isn't it interesting? We're expecting something to happen, and then the mind gets a little freedom, a break. Where did it go? Where did your mind go? It's interesting to consider that as we wait and wait and wait. Oh, I'm going to go to sleep. Sri Chaitanya, are you asleep? What's going on? You can. How do you know? Maybe you're dreaming that he's awake. Something appears to be not working properly. Okay.
The whole world is moving under the bodily conception of life. Because I am born in this land, my body is born out of this land, American land. Therefore I am thinking American. Because I am born in India, therefore I am thinking Indian. Because I am born of a certain family, therefore I am identifying myself with that family. Because my father has given me some name, so I am identifying with that name. So my position is that I am all around surrounded by this bodily conception of life. Now, from studying Bhagavad Gita or deeply thinking over the matter, I come to understand that I am not this body. That is settled, that's all. But actually, I am working on bodily plane. This adjustment is required. Yes, you, for the present moment, because you are entangled or enwrapped within this, encased within this body, so you cannot say that I will work without this body. But you can work in such a way that even without this body, even with this body, you can work in your spiritual platform. Although I am in this bodily conception of life, still I can work from the spiritual platform. That technical knowledge is instructed by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, that you are not this body, but you have to work at the same time. Then how? Then here is the formula. Yogastha kuru karmani. Yogastha. Yogastha means that you remain in spiritual consciousness, but at the same time you go on with your usual work. You remain in spiritual consciousness and go on with your work. That is very difficult. I am working with bodily conception of life. How I can be situated in spiritual conception of life? So, this technique is Sangang Tattya Dhananjaya. Sangang Tattya Dhananjaya. Without being touched with bodily conception. And how it can be done? Na siddhya siddhu samana bhutva samattam yoga uchyate. That neutrality will be that in the former verse it has been already explained that you have right to work but not for the result. Don't be cause of the effect of your result, then you will be bound up.
Part 2. So that was stating the problem. Ethan? How to achieve this through expanding our consciousness. So gradually, Prabhupada, after stating the problem, will get very practical. So he explains, we are bound up by the reaction of every work due to the attachment that we have to the fruit of the work. So the first principle that Prabhupada stated previously was to be detached from the fruit of the work and fixed, steady in that way. It is just like this world is so situated. So he's going to give an example now. You know that a sound vibration, practically, nowadays, everyone knows that any sound vibrated, it within a second, it takes around all over the world 7 times sound vibration. It is so. The arrangement is so, just like, and he gives a more obvious example. Just if you drop a stone into a pond, the circle begins to enlarge, 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 enlarge. And what is that called in English? What's the word for that? A ripple. Yeah, thank you. And so similarly, and listen to this, very interesting. So if we do something or say something, it expands. It's not limited to the small place where we say or do it. Similarly, here's a third example. A radio vibration. We would say a radio frequency, and now there's so many frequencies, mobile phones, this, that. There's numbers or frequency number, and under such and such vibration or frequency, you can catch the sound. So in other words, there's so many frequencies already going around the world. And if you are tuned in properly, in the example Prabhupada gave from the 60s, was not a mobile phone, it was a radio. If you're tuned in properly, or to look at it a little different way, you're going to pick up different vibrations or frequency depending upon how your consciousness is tuned. Is that clear? Anyone would like me to repeat that? Yes. So there's so much, just like if you have a radio. Of course, no one even knows what a radio is nowadays, practically speaking, but unless you have a radio app on your phone. But according to how you tune the radio, to what frequency, you'll get one station or another. So we want to tune our consciousness, is what Prabhupada's going to say, because there's so much going around. There's so many frequencies going around. So you can catch the sound depending upon the frequency that you're tuned to. Now, coming to the point of Krishna consciousness, if we work even in that arrangement, yoga sta, if your mind, consciousness, is yoga sta, being situated on the spiritual plane, if somehow we can get our mind situated on the spiritual plane, if we're tuned into that frequency, then that mind will reach the spiritual sky by the enlargement of the circle. So Prabhupada is going back to the example as if you throw a stone in to the pond, then there's ripples and ripples that enlarge and enlarge. So if you get your consciousness tuned into the spiritual plane, that circle will enlarge. So you actually are connected to the spiritual plane. So by enlargement of the circle, I can do work here, even though we're on this level. You will find in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord says, and he's going to get quite specific. He says, Patram Pushpam Yom Bhakta Prayasati. That if one offers me with devotion, even a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, Krishna says, I will accept it. Prabhupada continues. Anyone who offers devotion, in devotion, patram pushpam, a little flower, a little small leaf, a little water, I will accept it because it is offered to me in devotion. Therefore, I accept it. I will take it in my hand. So we'll end this section here, but Prabhupada's going to speak more about this point about Krishna taking it in his hand. But he's giving the hint. Could you read that, Ethan? We need you again to read it loudly. On to how to achieve. So how to get our consciousness right so that we can work in this world, but not only not be entangled in this world, but be with Krishna in spiritual consciousness. Okay, so please play the second one now. This is part 2. Krishna willing. What are you thinking? We are bound up by reaction. That's what I was thinking. What are you thinking? Just imagine if what you were thinking was connected to a loudspeaker and everyone knew what you were thinking. Talking about not having any friends in this world, that would be a good way to not have any friends in this world. Let's try again. What are you thinking? What are you connected to at this very moment?
You are being bound up by reaction of every word. It is just like this world is so situated that you know that a sound vibration practically nowadays everyone knows it, that any sound vibrated, it within a second it takes round all over the world 7 times. It is so, the arrangement is so. Just like in a pond, if you drop a stone, the circle begins to enlarge. And so, similarly, we catch the radio vibration. You know there is numbers under such and such vibration you can catch this sound. So, the whole arrangement is like that. Now, if we work even in that arrangement, yogastha, being situated in my spiritual plane, then that will reach to the spiritual sky by enlargement of the circle. Enlargement of the circle. I can do work here. You'll find in the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord says that Patram puspam phalam toyam jumi bhakta prajichati. Anyone who offers in devotion patram puspam, a little flower, a small leaf, a little water, I accept them because it is offered to me in devotion, therefore I accept them. I take them in my hand.
Now, the question is, well, there's many questions that come up, but how to tune my consciousness? So Krishna's already given one very important instruction to become yogastha by detachment from the fruit of one's work. Now, if we try to be focused on the spiritual platform while we're attached to the results and want to enjoy on the material platform, then we're going in two different directions at once. Now, how to deal with that particular point, which is a point that most of us somehow, sometimes or another, may experience ourselves being in between two worlds in that way. We'll talk about that later as well. But that's not the point that Prabhupada wants to make now. If we can get our consciousness tuned into the spiritual level of Goloka Vrindavan, that even if we're working with our bodies on the material level, our consciousness will be causing Krishna, as he said, he will take what you're offering in his hand. So let's go on to the third section. What is the third one called? Ethan, you ready? Yes, so how to get our consciousness in bhakti. So here in this first class, the stating of the problem and a theoretical understanding of the solution is being given. Now I'm going to read what Prabhupada says in this third class, the third part of this first class. You ready? You ready to focus and hear? I know you're ready. What makes one ready to actually want to be with Krishna and be so eager that we can't wait to hear the instructions? That's an interesting question. And even more interesting if we personalize it. What would it take me to be so eager? What would it take me to be so eager to be with Krishna? So Prabhupada continues. And anyone who offers in devotion, patram pushpam, a little flower, a little small leaf, a little water, I accept them because it is offered to me in devotion. Therefore, I accept them. I take them in my hand. But people may ask the question, where is the hand? Where is the hand of God? He says that I take. I take means I take it in my hand. Without hand, there's no question of taking. Therefore, the Vedic hymn says, Apani Pado Javani Grihita Svatasvatara Upanishad, which means that the Lord has no material hands and no material legs and no material anything, but yet he accepts things, he speaks, because he does things spiritually. So the Lord says, I have no hands, no legs, but still he can walk more than the speed of the air, more than the speed of the mind, and he can accept whatever we offer. He accepts what we offer. Bhaktuparitam asnami. Asnami means I take it if it's offered with bhakti. So this means he has no hands, he has no legs like our limited measured hand or legs, or he can stretch his hand anywhere. And similarly, he can stretch, he can hear from anywhere. How does that make you feel? That Krishna can hear and accept and hear from anywhere. How does that make you feel? Who said that? Who said safe? Very good boy. Sometimes it makes me very frightened. But you're gooder than I. That is the prerogative of the Supreme Lord. I've given you several times the example that the sun is far away from us. Still, he can distribute his light and heat to us thousands of miles away, millions of miles away. So if we work in God consciousness, Prabhupada's saying, although we are here in this platform, the material platform, that work is admitted or accepted by the Supreme Lord. That is called yoga sta. Yoga means the connection. You are situated in yoga. It means if you are tuned into the right frequency as you work, Krishna is there with you. Yoga means keeping touch with the Supreme. That is called yoga. So there are different kinds of yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, especially Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And within Jnana Yoga, there are many other yogas. Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, so many things. Now here it is said that yoga sta kuru karmani. You be situated in your yoga or in meditation. Generally, yoga is understood as meditation. But yoga, real meaning of yoga is to be connected, to keep in touch with the Supreme. That is called yoga, to keep in touch. So it doesn't mean physical exercises that are popularized today as yoga. Yoga actually means the connection. And it can be done by meditation. It can be done by kirtan. It can be done through all the means of bhakti, or even the Jnana Advaitavadis, who are actually expert in meditation, they can be connected to the Brahmati, Paramati, Bhagavat, Brahman aspect of the Supreme Lord, at least for some time. So to connect, and this is what we want to do, and this is what the soul in the material world is lacking, that connection. And that is the lacking that everyone feels. So you have to work from the platform of spiritual consciousness. At the same time, you have to work. You have to be in consciousness and you have to work. And the next class, this afternoon's class, Prabhupada will speak about some he gets very practical in the next class. You have to work. The Lord never says you stop work. So avoid the tendency to think, oh, I don't want to become entangled. And this is what the Jnana yogis do. or the path, but mostly in Jnana Yoga. It's such a difficult path if one wants to actually practice meditation. Or yoga as described in the Bhagavad Gita or Patanjali Yoga Sutras. You can't go to a class once or twice or 3 times a week in the city and just do your exercises. Really, the idea is you have to become completely internally absorbed. This is what Jnana Yoga is, or Sankhya Yoga, or yoga is, to become completely internally absorbed so you're not at all absorbed in the outside world. And therefore, neti, I'm not this. This is the absorption. This is that one has to be always introspectively examining one's own consciousness. This thought that comes to me, this is not me. I'm not my mind to be able to distinguish between the mind, the intelligence, and to be able to capture the false ego. And that's not me. And then perceive oneself, this is Jnana Yoga, as consciousness. I know someone who is so adept at this. He told me he could become so absorbed in not thinking, he could do it for an hour and a half because thinking to him was the problem. But what happens after the hour and a half where you're so successful? Then you do something and you have to work and you have to go back to your life. And then your whole concept of I've just meditated and I've done this wonderful thing. And there you are acting selfishly, self-absorbed again. But bhakti is a different type of absorption and meditation. It's internal, very internal, but it's manifested in practical work as well. Type of yoga could take hundreds and hundreds. Meditative yoga could take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. How many years did Valmiki meditate for? Maybe thousands of years. How many do you know? 1,000 years approximately. It's so hard to get 1,000 years of work now. But still, even if one masters that, one must still further advance and understand what that consciousness is in service to beyond the realm of matter. And that's what Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a lecture also in when Prabhupada was writing teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he gave some, how are you boys doing? Is it it's hard to focus for so long? Or you're doing okay? Come on, you can say it, be honest. Okay. What would help if I tell more jokes or what? Okay. Okay, let's see what we could do. When you read Prabhupada's words and hear his words, does that help? Does that refocus or you need a break? Uh, so we'll get to that. So Chaitanya Charitamrita speaks about um, the activities, the charita, the activities of Chaitanya, the soul, and the of eternity. Because here we see the activities of people. You go to an airport, you just watch the people in the city walking around. We see the people completely enwrapped in the coverings of the material energy, in their complexes and their karmas and their bodies. So we see people acting because the soul must be active, but we see them acting in the realm of matter. And what Lord Chaitanya is teaching, and Chaitanya Charitamrita is speaking about, is the activities of the soul in the land of eternity. The eternal soul in the land of eternity. So even if one can meditate without thinking for an hour and 20 minutes. The only way I can do that is sleeping, almost. But still, we have to learn about the eternal soul's activities in the land of eternity. So Prabhupada continues, and we're almost finished with this. Krishna never says, because Prabhupada wants to make the point that we have to work, we have to be active. Krishna never says, Arjuna, I'm God myself, I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He never said, Arjuna, I'm your friend, I shall supply you all your necessities. You don't require to work. You stop. No, he never said that. Rather, Arjuna was declining to fight, but Krishna was inducing him to fight. So in spiritual platform, there is no question of stopping work. No question of stopping work, but work for the Supreme. That's all. Isavasya idam sarvam. So that's the end of this. And let's hear Prabhupada say what I just repeated that he said. But it leaves us with a question, and I'll bring up the question right after. I'll bring it up right now. How to practically do this? And Prabhupada will practically speak in the next class on it. But go ahead.
Anyone who offers in devotion patram puspam, a little flower, a small leaf, a little water, I accept them because it is offered to me in devotion, therefore I accept them. I take them in my hand. But people may ask question that where is the hand? Where is the hand of God? He says that I take. I take means I take it in my hand. Without hand there is no question of taking. Therefore, Vedic hymn says, the apadapani javanagrahita, the Lord has no legs, no hands, but he can walk more than the speed of the air, more than the speed of the mind, and he can accept whatever we offer. But he has no hand, he has no leg. That this means that he has no hand, he has no leg, like our limited measured hand or leg. He can stretch his hand anywhere. And similarly, he can stretch, he can hear from anywhere. That is the prerogative of the Supreme Lord. I have given you several times the example that the sun is far, far away from us. Still, he can distribute his heat and light to us. So, if we work with God consciousness, although we are here in this platform, material platform, that work is admitted by the Supreme Lord. That is called yoga. Yoga means keeping touch with the Supreme. That is called yoga. There are different kinds of yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, especially Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And within Jnana Yoga, there are many other yogas, Dhyana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, so many things. Now, here it is said that yogastha kuru karmani. You be situated in your yoga or a meditation. Generally, yoga is understood as meditation, but yoga, real meaning of yoga, to keep in touch with the Supreme. That is called yoga. To keep in touch. So you have to work for the from the platform of spiritual consciousness. At the same time, you have to work. The Lord never says that you stop work. Never says. Arjuna's friend was Lord Krishna. But Krishna never said he is God himself. He is the Supreme Personality of God himself. He never said, Arjuna, that I am your friend. I shall supply all your necessities. You don't require to work, you stop. No, he never said. Rather, Arjuna was declining to fight, but Krishna is inducing him to fight. So in spiritual platform, there is no question of stopping work. No question of stopping work. But work for the Supreme. That's Ishavasmidam sarvam, with God consciousness.
So this point about the hand of God can stretch to us is so important. We see in the Bhagavatam about Gajendra. What canto of the Bhagavatam? About Gajendra. He was struggling so hard with the crocodile, but then he took a lotus flower and he began to pray, and immediately the Lord came. We see in the 10th canto, in the 28th chapter, where Nanda Maharaj had gone into the Yamuna River at what was thought of as an inappropriate time. And some of the misguided servants of Varunadev took him. So what did that look like from the surface? If the cowherd men were with Nanda Maharaj, what did it look like? He entered the water and suddenly he disappeared. And the cowherd men who were with Nanda, they loved him so much. And to see Nanda drown, disappear within the water, they were in great, great distress, naturally. But they did what the Brajbasis always did. They called out to Krishna, they called out to Balaram, but they called out Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. They did not know where else to turn. They never knew where else to turn but Krishna. And Krishna was far away at that time. Our acharyas described he was sleeping on a bed of lotus petals, flower petals. But when the Brajbasis called to him, immediately he was present. Immediately he was present. Because they're Brajbasis. They're completely tuned in. Their frequency is tuned in to the frequency of Goloka Vrindavan. They're in Goloka Vrindavan. So here, the issue that Prabhupada is bringing up is such an important issue, especially Prabhupada speaking to those who have no concept of Krishna consciousness. But we are devotees, and this is especially relevant for us because we want to work. We have to work. There's no avoiding work, but we want to get our consciousness tuned in properly so that our work is bhakti. Our activities are bhakti. And they will bring us closer and closer and closer to Krishna and not entangle us further in the material world. So this differentiation between, as in the words of Srila Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Chesta Rupa and Bhava Rupa. Chesta Rupa means the activities of bhakti, and Bhava Rupa means the consciousness of bhakti, or performing those activities. And we want to bring those two together, and that will be so powerful. And Prabhupada's going to speak about some practical ways to do it in the next part of the lecture, which we'll give in this afternoon. Okay, what I would like you to do now is take out your notebooks and also maybe open some windows and doors so we allow some air to circulate. And we'll have some minutes where you can write down your thoughts about what Prabhupada has spoken about and what you've heard in this lecture about what this talk and class on what the issue is that Prabhupada is bringing up in 1966, just a few months after he's arrived in the United States to begin his preaching mission. Now, this is what I call directed free writing, which means for the next 10 minutes, you only have to write and don't think and don't let your pen stop. And you have a problem, yes, because you can't write because you work too hard. So you have to think. Or can you write with your left hand? No, but you can type. But we can't do that. Okay, but just the goal again is just to keep writing. Just keep writing. Don't think. And if you don't know what to write about, just write. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. But see if you still remember how to write after all those years of just keyboard work. See if you can do it for 10 minutes, and I'll let you know after 5 minutes and 9 minutes, and then I'll let you know when the time is up, and then we'll begin the next part of our activity. Anyone have any questions about this? What we're going to do? So begin your writing, please. And again, just keep the pen moving. That's the whole goal here. Just keep the pen moving and don't stop it. You'll be surprised if you let your pen do your thinking for you. You'll be surprised at what kind of amazing things come out of that magic pen of yours. Just keep writing. Don't stop. Even if you don't know what to write about, just keep writing anyway. Even if you write, just don't write Hare Krishna, because you'll never stop just writing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's so much pleasure. And we'll take your bank deposits later. But just keep the pen moving. That's the whole goal. Be thoughtful about what you heard about. But let your thoughts come through your pen. Don't think, or let your pen do your thinking as you write. Don't think, you're thinking. Just write. Discuss what you understood, or write down what you understood, what questions you have, what you're not sure about, practical thoughts. Just keep writing. You'll be surprised once you write what you actually remember, too, and what thoughts you have. Keep writing. Don't think. Don't think. Just keep writing. And no one else, no one else is going to see what you've written either. That's completely private. So you don't have to worry. That's between you and you. Five minutes gone, 5 minutes left to keep writing. Just keep the pen moving. Keep writing. Keep the pen moving. The machine has told you that the 10 minutes are over. You can take a few seconds to finish if you want. But now, what I'd like everyone to do is to break into small groups of 5, 6, 7, or 8 devotees, and then just discuss your thoughts on the topics that we heard just this morning. Now, how to do that when you're all the chairs, I guess you'll have to move, there'll be some chair moving. But after the chairs are moved, before we leave, you have to move them back to where they are. 5, 6, 7, 8, so that everyone has enough time to speak. Discuss your thoughts on the topics that you wrote about and that we spoke about.
I found the concept of ripple.
Groups of 5, 6, 7, or 8.
It seemed like Prabhupada was saying that if you act, they
Hey,
actually
you can join those. You can join this group.
on this side there's unlimited capacity and
Hey, you too.
things. And
You too.
capacity to
Gentlemen, little gentlemen, you can join one of the other groups. Come over here.
I said,
You 3 can come over here.
Prabhupada was saying that you act on the spiritual plane, then there's a ripple effect.
Come here.
That
Go to that group.
impact of your activity.
Go to that group.
from his side, he's unlimited, so he has limited leg, limited capacity to reach out for strength. What am I saying?
There's a group of two.
That means that the potential for connection is unlimited.
It's a group of 8, 2 fours.
I might be thinking we're nothing, but by acting the Krishna, then it's a ripple effect. What's very interesting. But
You 3 over there. Join a bigger group.
then we put sound very fine. Excellent. So you just get he's sitting in the audience. There's anyone there. Right. I hardly think there's any audience. But his power that he accepts and he knows the Lord is coming and taking place again. That's something that that's like in the world. So at that time, like how we begin to uh, what else? Yeah, it is Lord takes. That's something really fascinating me, like, like here they're all the devotees, but they're proper Christian. Like at that time. Uh, So this is Nisa Prabhu, and he stored a jar right up. What did you reflect on? I was reflecting on what Bob when you started this class with, and how you for the Robot class was mentioning about something a very practical question about we have to understand that we are not just body, but we also have to work. And how can we do the two things at the same time? And it's a struggle. And Prabhupada's point, which was so apt and was so was beautiful. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 40, yoga is the true Brahman, and working in yoga while being detached from the results, from the effects of your work. In that way, you're not working towards the result. You're not working for the success or the failure of an event. You're just doing it in yoga in connection with spirit. And and that completely transforms the nature of the world. That and so and yeah, I really like that. It's really nice and then you should let us know what build up on that verse. And that'll be right in the beginning. So yeah,
yeah, that's what I was
quite
dancing
interesting.
in. Right at the beginning, this is
Although it's fully transcendental, it's not difficult to understand. Like in the sense that probably very practical that working with science is fingers, but working next means it's
Supposed to take December and put the account. They were supposed to detach ourselves from all the material stuff, but we have to use the material stuff it's advanced by spiritual. It's like if we don't like with our body, if we don't do meditation, kirtan, like devotee association, we won't be able to like advance in spiritual knowledge and spiritual work. And I also wrote how the radio frequency example is really practical because we know like it's a struggle to like get the right frequency to what like, obviously I haven't used a radio, but I believe it's been a struggle back then to like get the right radio station. Yeah. So I figured that it's the same in our sense with this example that it's a struggle to connect with spiritual frequency, which is our that's basically what it is. Or not much.
I have a question. In the verse that we started with Bhagavad Gita, it seems to say that just by doing your duty without attachment, that's yoga. Then one might say there are plenty of people in a certain circumstance who might work without attachment in a sense of duty. Like for instance, a mother, you know, child and cleaning up a mess for the child, right? Cleaning, yeah. So she's only doing that, not out of pleasure and pain, but just she has to do it. That's not yoga. The verse seems to say that if you work doing your duty, that's yoga stuff. But actually it's saying situating yoga is way. So, any answers to this question? Because my reflection to that would be, and it is itself the you in a single line, and my understanding that this this being detached from the research is not necessarily yoga. Oh. Although it's definitely one of the prerequisites, but the most important aspect is that it's doing it for Krishna. Um, and yoga is the word itself means our connection with the Supreme. So our connection with the Supreme, while our attachment or desire for success or failure is not hindering, but it's our direct connection with the Supreme in the sense of just like if mother is serving the child, it's not about mother's feeling of like how do I it's her feeling of like uh, how do I feel right now or how is the weather like or if I really want to do something like that feeling doesn't come between her service to her child, which is her duty. And so similarly, we know what Krishna wants because he says in the Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad the spiritual master and the devotees and so we do that without our own sentiments of success and failure or our attachments to what is comfortable to us, what we like to do, but we do it for the benefit of the sessions. I'm saying it. Okay. Yeah, so I think first you have to strive first for yoga style. Be situated connection consciously. And then I think you're right, then I think to be devoid of attachment, to be not concerned about success and failure, that is only honing the frequency of connection. It's refining the connection. Like if we can actually be working for Krishna and we're not concerned about success and failure, as Prabhupada exhibited, he had both success and failure in his efforts, but he wasn't praised. And that is like refining the frequency of connections. I, I had a question because I must have got spaced out in between the lecture, but I sort of failed to see a connection where Prabhupada explained about working when you work with no attachment, then you're saving yourself the entanglement. Um, and then and then something happened, and then the Prabhupada was talking about the Bhatram Pushpam Param and how they're offering and Krishna was cutting, etc. So what was the connection? I can't remember that period.
Say what? How did we get from detached word to Patram Pushpam? Was it that Krishna's everywhere and stands on the
Krishna can reach out anywhere, he can move faster than everything, and give us anything. And then to move on to the yoga part, where the actual meaning of yoga is to keep in touch with the supreme through meditations.
I think that's where Patram Pushpam comes in, is that you can do something as simple as offer a leaf of flower through the water. Because Krishna is all pervasive and it's personally with each one of us, it's in the heart. So that means he will accept even the smallest thing. So I think the connection is Krishna's all pervasive presence and personal, it's personal interest to accept the offerings and his personal interest in it.
That was the part between it is connecting to Krishna through Bhakti Yoga.
Yeah.
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 So what was the hint in part two? Do you remember the hint?
Hare Krishna. Just another 4 minutes.
Hint on how to change you.
Another few minutes. No, continue.
You get the hint, Jaraka? Part two?
Yeah, mental health, yeah. First person to touch yourself different. Sure, no consciousness to spiritual. If your mind consciousness is triggered at the spiritual mind, then that mind will reach the spiritual sky by the enlargement of
Wow. You did again, that about consciousness?
if your mind consciousness is situated on the spiritual plane, then that mind will reach the spiritual sky by the enlargement of
The ripple effect. That's the hint, but it's the ripple effect of our consciousness. That we're a conscious being. That our consciousness can in effect directly connect through an expansive extension.
What that expansion here? What's the expansion side?
Conscious intention.
conscious. Yeah. If your mind consciousness is situated on the spiritual plane, then that mind will reach the spiritual sky by enlargement or the ripple.
That's amazing. So you're on the other side of the room. Honey, I really need to get a message to preach for Papa as we go there. Well, I can do right. If we're limited to the senses, what this is saying is that just through your conscious, placing your pressure in your conscious awareness, connected. Our spiritual connection means not limited.
Just another 2 minutes.
If we want to communicate with someone right now in Melbourne, we're dependent on these devices, but there's no other choice without something. But this is saying that if we want to connect with Krishna, you're always
Trying to seek balance.
yes. We've only got to get our consciousness situated right. There's a limited balance. It's actually to be connected to Krishna. No, but it doesn't have to be. Right now we experience it.
So why do we experience impediments? It is that if we have that potential, why are we experiencing impediments? Why do I feel like I've living distant from Christian? He's there reaching out, and I have conscious potential. What was there's some disinclination. Tuned out.
Too much or too little.
It's like we had the experience of tuning out the conversation. Someone's just rattling on and you just tune out. So we tuned out to Krishna and we have been for a long time. We're trying to, right now, we're trying to
Okay.
turn the
Hare Krishna.
discussion off.
Now, if we could just
Record this.
have a few minutes to see if anyone has any burning questions that weren't answered in your group discussion. And of course, we'll be continuing with part 2 this afternoon, class 2. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand, please. If you have any questions, raise your hand, please. Yes, there's a question here.
Hare Krishna.
You're controlling the sound. I have to ask you. Otherwise, yes, what question? Or you just want to hand the microphone to someone else? Huh?
Either way is fine.
Okay, as you like.
Thank you very much for bringing this topic. It's very practical. The question is, of course, I have a couple of questions.
We all have. How in the world become a real devotee? Yes.
So, starting with this first question about.
No, you only get one now. One question,
Yes.
do rupee. No question, 4 rupee.
Hare Krishna. So, I mean, Maharaj, you mentioned about the red light example, Srila Prabhupada being practical
Yes.
in the beginning. Now, just applying this practically in my life from that perspective, we hear that we have anusharan and anukaran, like following versus mimicking. So yes, just Prabhupada did it, but then if I go and do it on the streets of Melbourne, it may not work the same way. So, like, yes,
Well, the question wasn't the example wasn't whether we should walk through lights or not. The point was that we should be practical.
Yes, Mark. So, how we can decide, or what is that aspect that we can take that it will define that this is being practical and this is.
So there's theoretical knowledge, gyan, and then there is wisdom, which is vigyan. Sometimes that is translated as science. So to know how to apply the teachings practically, the theoretical teachings practically to our life and the life of others is what wisdom. So to become wise, we don't go to a school and study a course on how to become wise. Generally speaking, we live our life and we learn from mistakes and we ask those who are more wise than us for advice, especially even to confirm what we already think is a wise decision. So I'm hearing your question is how to become wise, how to learn how to apply the philosophy practically to our lives. And my question, my immediate thought on that, which in one sense avoids your question, is the real question is how to tune our consciousness into what is pleasing to Krishna. That we'll discuss more in this afternoon's class. So, because one could be very practical, but not at all be tuned into pleasing Krishna. So that's really the essence of it, how to develop bhakti, which is really the answer. So we have a whole, and I'll be discussing it obviously more this afternoon. We have a whole process that refines our consciousness. That's really the issue, is how to refine our consciousness. And the basic practices of Krishna consciousness are in the mode of goodness, sattva gun. It's a sattva gun lifestyle. Because when one is being tortured by tamagun and rajagun, it's very hard to have the wisdom. So we want to clean up our lives to a large degree. Clean it so to align our lives with our real goal in life. And yeah, so I don't want to give away everything from this afternoon's class, but yeah, is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
And if we find, of course, everyone thinks they're wise, but we at least should know some. If we know devotees who are more wise than us, then we are very fortunate, and we can. And if they'll actually take the time to listen to our questions and give us advice, then we're very fortunate. And that it's important to have wise, trusted friends, more wise than us. And if we can't find anyone more wise than us, then what? And then we should chant better rounds. There was one devotee many years ago. Many years ago, he asked Prabhupada about. He said, since Krishna consciousness is a Brahman realization, I think I'm going to leave Krishna consciousness and become Brahman realized and then come back. And you know what Prabhupada's answer was? Are you chanting 16 rounds a day? So that's where we begin, trying to really chant good rounds, chant with sincerity. O Krishna, O Lord, O energy of the Lord, O Krishna, O Srimati Radharani, please allow me to serve you. Okay, thank you. Yes, you had a question.
Maharaj, we heard about being equipoised in success and failure. So if we keep that mentality that I don't want to work to achieve, then how can one remain responsible also for their actions?
Then, yeah. Question is, and this comes up in this afternoon's class, is who do we want to please? Not the question isn't being irresponsible. Just imagine if Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra got mental about should he fight or not fight, or should I sincerely try to kill this person, or he'd be dead within a moment. So unless we really focus on what we are doing in life, then we will get into so much trouble And Krishna consciousness doesn't mean not working again, but it means having the kind of consciousness in our work that connects us with Krishna. So that we're going to discuss more this afternoon, but you get the basic point. So we're not teaching irresponsibility at all. But Arjuna, why did he fight? He fought because he wanted to please Krishna. So somehow or another, becoming sincere servants of Krishna and those dear to Krishna is at the essence of the question, or the essence of the art. And then when we accept that that's really the issue, then the real challenge is, the challenges are mostly internal. And then we become humble also. And humility is the way to begin. Actually, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that true humility comes from chanting offenseless rounds, chanting offenselessly. That's Krishna's gift, to understand that we're tiny souls, practically in the grip of the material energy, and that we need Krishna's mercy desperately. Then our chanting will be powerful.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Maybe we could send to the side now, because we'll end at 1:00 exactly. See, both these questions were deep and thoughtful questions, and that have no real easy mechanical, just like Western medicine. You just take a pill and the problem is gone on a superficial level. It's just Krishna consciousness is deep. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Next.
I'm sorry. Um, um, it's basically what she asked. I have a similar question on that. So, mostly my satisfaction depends on the result. Like if the result is good, I'm satisfied. If it is not good, I'm not satisfied. And then I think if I'm not satisfied, how can I satisfy Krishna? Like if I do any service.
Wait. Did I hear you correctly? You only think of how to satisfy Krishna when the result isn't good. Is that correct? Did I hear it right?
Yeah.
No wonder Krishna gives you bad results. Next question. That way. I already allowed this problem. What's your name? Luke. And what's your name? Well, you just asked that. Huh? Shreya. Did I cut you off improperly? But what I wanted to say is, why don't you always try to please Krishna? And then you could do something wonderful and have the best result for Krishna's pleasure. But if it doesn't work out and you can sincerely say, I've tried my best. Okay, Krishna. When you don't do well, have you tried your best? Usually? Yeah. So we have to become a little more detached from the result and more attached to pleasing Krishna. So the question is, well, that's easy to say, but how do I do that? I've driven Shriya. Yeah, so make sure you drive on the right side of the road, which is the left side in Australia, by the way.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
We was discussing about offering something to Krishna. And in the beginning for me, when I heard like offering, I kind of thought, oh, well, you do it and then you offer it to Krishna. But I was also articulating that maybe like it's the mood in which you are doing it with that is the offering. So is this linked to we're all working and we have this idea of the fruits in our mind, but how can we, is it through the offering? Are you offering your work to Krishna through that
or
mood?
just the results? Is that the question?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, according to the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a difference between yat karosi rasasi, yat johosi dadati and patram puspam palam toyam. The verses are right next to each other. One is you do what you want to do, and you offer the result to Krishna, which is wonderful. But that's called karma yoga. And that's the best that most of us can practically do. But bhakti yoga is something different. It's that, Krishna, you want me to do this in this way? You want me to do this? I'm your servant. I'm doing this work. I'm offering the very process of my activity to you. And naturally, I'm also offering the result. So we want to develop the consciousness. We're fortunate if we can develop the consciousness that I am yours, Krishna. How can I serve you? How can I please you? But if we can't do that, then we should do that. And if we can't do that, we should do that. And if we can't do that, we should do that. And if we can't do that, we should do that. And what we shouldn't do is that, if you know what I mean.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In the lecture, Srila Prabhupada gave example of transcendental sound vibrations, and I did not understand in which context Prabhupada was putting that particular in the third part of the lecture. And
Yes. Well, in those days, this was 1960s, there was common knowledge amongst the people that Prabhupada was speaking to, the young people, that sound vibration or anything would circulate the earth 7 times, anything that was said or done. So Prabhupada was speaking to that, to those people, and he said it's common knowledge, basically. But people don't think in those terms nowadays. So it's less than common knowledge. But the point that he was making was that the vibration or the frequency by which we speak or the frequency mood in which we act doesn't end right here. So, for instance, if I say something really nasty and cutting to you, and then it may take, has anyone really insulted you like that in your life? And the act may end in 10 seconds, but it stays in your consciousness for maybe 30 or 40 years. So the act means more than just the time. So then he changed the example to the ripple, the pond in the water. So the same point is that one little activity, the effect expands. And then he changed it again to a radio with its frequency. Now that one even becomes more complete because you can pick up, depending upon what your frequency is of your radio, you can pick up different frequencies that are being emanated from different places. So Krishna picks up the frequency of bhakti if it's emanating from a devotee's heart, from his consciousness. He'll pick up that frequency and reciprocate with it. And he can do it at any time, in any place. And that was the point Prabhupada was making with this hand. He could say he can take it. So he said, how can he take it? And he said, he doesn't have hands. But he doesn't have hands like we have hands. His hands are transcendental. They go to any time, any place, just like that. So if we have bhakti, devotion to Krishna, he immediately becomes aware in that sense and reciprocates. And such an example of Ajamil, that he was calling out what? Narayana, Narayana, and he was meaning his son. But just like if I call, what's your name? Huh? Priyanshu. And is there another? No, I bet there's only one. Okay, but is there only Priyanshu? Is there another one in this room? Okay. Is anyone named Raju? There's usually 10 or 15 or Mahesh or something. But if I call one person by a name and another person has that name, that person, the second, I'm calling this person, but that person, he'll hear that like he's calling me. So similarly, Lord Narayan in Goloka Vrindavan, when he called Narayan, Arjuna called Narayan his son, he heard it, and his mood was so liberal. And Srila Prabhupada incorporated the comment of Sridhar Swami, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur picked this up as well in his commentary, and Prabhupada put it in his in a note at the end of this chapter. Krishna is so liberal that his mood was, my devotee, the Lord Narayan was so liberal, my devotee is calling for me, even though he was calling his son, but it's the same name. My devotee is calling for me. It is my duty to give him protection. So therefore he sent the Vishnu Dutas. So this is the liberality, the broad-mindedness, the open-heartedness of our Krishna. So I'm not sure if I directly answered you, or you asked me about the meaning of the.
No, that's what I was asking, and now it is clear.
Yeah, because there were three examples, one on top of the other.
Yes, yes.
So the point that I brought up, the Ajamil point, was that so if your frequency of bhakti is exactly connected to bhakti, which as a result there's the object, the vishya of the bhakti. But even if it's remotely connected, Krishna is so liberal. There are other examples of this too. So Kava Dayalam Sharanam Brajema. What's the rest of the verse? Putana was given the position of Datri because she came disguised as a devotee. So our bhakti is, mine tends to be a little like Putana bhakti. It's disguised, but still Krishna is so kind. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
It's over. It's 1:00. Go take prasadam, please. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.